Joining me today on Good News with Twanda Black, where we're discovering some of the most inspiring trials to triumph stories and empowerment moments. Call up a friend and let them good news. Hello and welcome to Good News. I'm Twanda Black, your host, where we talk with folks from all walks of life about their good news. Because ultimately, if our brothers and sisters are having good news, so are we. So it's all right. So here we go. Joining us today is Ramon Hervey II. He is an entertainment manager, brand consultant, public relations specialist. He wears a lot of hats, but he also has a company called Hervey and Company. He's written a new book, which is an amazing book. It is The Fame Game, and for earning your 15 minutes. And y'all know what we say about 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes of fame, right, Ramon?
Yes, that saying was actually credited to Andy Warhol. It came into the pop culture in 1968. He said half of the sentence, and then a photographer that was with him said the other half. They said, yeah, everyone wants to be famous. And Andy said, yeah, for 15 minutes. They were in a photo shoot at a museum in Sweden. And I always, that the saying and the meaning of it always resonated with me when I got involved in the entertainment business. I basically assessed talent and artists that I was going to be involved with, not so much just as almost like a metaphor, like what is the ceiling to any artist? Fame is not a destination; it's an accolade, and it's a byproduct of success. So in analyzing 15 minutes, I really look at how successful can a person get, and then once they get there, how long can you sustain that success? And that's where that's how I relate it from my role as a publicist.
You didn't start out doing that, and when you got into it, my God, you work with so many artists. The book is like a history book. I read and I was like, oh my God, it's so much information. First of all, how long did it take you to write all of the stories, to compile all of it, because it's so much?
Yeah, it took me 3 years, basically. From beginning, the first iteration of the book, I actually came up with it. A friend challenged me to do something every hour in the morning from 6:30 to 7:30 for 3. I had been thinking about it, contemplating it, but it wasn't really moving forward. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to write about, to be honest. I knew I didn't want to do a memoir. So that's where the first iteration in my outline came. And then I developed the treatment, and then I went out to a publisher and an agent and all that, get a contract. And then the majority of the writing, I think, took, once I had my deal, at least 1.5 years to 2 years. Yeah.
Tell about some of the artists. If I start naming, I know I'll forget some, but tell about some of the ones that you worked with closely, and some of the ones that are in the book. It's phenomenal.
I've been very, very blessed to have worked with some really talented people, as you know, since you know a little bit of my background. And some of these people were also people that I was a fan of. I knew them through their work, and then when I got a chance to work with them, it was even more of a blessing, to be able to work with people that I knew something about and then learn more about them. But some of I worked with, I started off in London. That's where I really got my first break. And probably the biggest artist that anyone would know is a group called the Bay City Rollers. They were really popular, and they were like a pop group. In fact, they didn't even sing on their first record, but they had great producers. And at that time, the industry was such that you could actually get away with producing a whole record and using session singers and then making them the face of the group. That's really how they became famous. But then after London, I worked at Motown, and I got the chance to work with people like Stevie Wonder and a little bit Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, the Jackson 5, the Four Tops, all the disgruntled lead singers of the Temptations, David Ruffin, Dennis Edwards, Eddie
Bette
Tibbetts.
Midler. Bette Midler
Bette
was in
Midler
the
came
favorite.
later. Bette Midler, Richard Pryor,
Yes.
the Bee Gees, Hall and Oates, George Benson, Natalie Cole,
Woo.
Ashford and Simpson, Vanessa Williams, Babyface,
Muhammad Ali.
Quincy Jones,
Oh, my
really big supporter of mine. Andre Crouch, Don Cornelius and Soul Train. I've just been very lucky.
I'm telling y'all, it's a history book. I mean, and the backstory of everything was fascinating. But I love what you say. You talk about, this industry kind of being a crapshoot. And then in some of the stories, you even say, I regret that I fueled their flame for fame.
Who I worked with for over 20 years, and then Rick James.
Yeah.
And I thought, Rick James is one of the most talented people that I've, industry people, musicians. He could do everything. He played the guitar, he wrote, he produced, he arranged, he developed other groups. He really had a lot of talent, but he was very self-destructive. And the more famous he got, the more it infringed on his ability to have any kind of normal life. He just was obsessed with being famous, and fame can be addictive, and it can blur your vision in terms of what you should be doing with your life. And I think Rick just made a lot of poor choices and ended up, even when he made his comeback, or was in the process of getting a chance for a comeback through Dave Chappelle, who put him in all of his skits. And when he died, he had 7 drugs in him, and he just couldn't, he wanted back that sense of, of fame that he just reveled in it. And it just was, it ruined his life.
The funniest part about his story was the whole Prince beef and the concert where Prince had his bodyguard bring him in and sit him on the front row. Yeah. I laughed and laughed and laughed.
Yeah, that's a classic. That's the best prank I have ever witnessed in person. And the funny thing is, the reason why that is such an unbelievable story is that Rick gave Prince his break. If it wasn't for Rick put Prince on his very first national tour. After Prince, and I'll tell you a little bit, just quickly, that he had been on a Rolling Stone tour. He was supposed to do 6 dates on a Rolling Stone tour. After 2 shows, the audience had booed him on both places. Wow. And so the Rolling Stones didn't honor their agreement. They said, hey, it's not working out, so you got to go. And because that didn't happen, there was a slot open. Rick hadn't picked someone to open for him, and his manager, a guy by the name of Shep Gordon, got Prince on the tour. So Rick had given, Prince his break, and there was no reason for them to get in a beef, but they did. And then it just got worse and worse. And then that was the touche moment where, that was when Prince, not only did he do that at that party, at that event, that was at the Universal Amphitheater, just as I chronicled, for Bette Midler at Spago's, which used to be a really famous celebrity restaurant on Sunset Boulevard. And he brought, this is a party where there's at least 30 other celebrities there, and Prince comes in the party, cradled in this guy's arm, and literally sits him at his table. And that just, she was like, what the? She just couldn't believe, he would even go to this extreme. But that was, at that time, he was going through that phase. Again, that's how he was dealing with his pain. Everybody has a different way of, when they get to that point where they think they're famous, what can they get away with, or what is it that how does that fame fuel their existence and their lifestyle?
Yeah. You work with so many artists. Who was the most challenging for you?
The most challenging. I think that everyone presented a different challenge. So I don't know if there's one artist that I believed in his talent, but he was his own worst enemy. Yeah. And one of the things that he really wanted to do, and why he even hired me, is because he thought I could help him cross over. he didn't he enjoyed being supported by the Black community, but he wanted to be bigger than that.
Right.
And he would, one time I sent him a memo where he had canceled 60 interviews on a tour, 60, and over half of those were white media. And we used to get on, conversations on the phone where it was MF you, MF this, back and forth. And I go, Rick, look, fire me then, because, the reality is you're canceling it. So decide what you want to do, because you're ruining my reputation. One of the biggest ones that he canceled was the CBS Nightly News, which, you don't want to mess with the major networks. And that would have been a great caveat for him to have in his resume. And so just every time I tried to have more faith in him, he let me down some way, shape, or another. And then I ended up having to be a mop trying to clean up the mess.
Oh, yeah. What I did notice was you were this manager, but you were really a cleanup person, a nurse, a doctor, a therapist. You were like all these different things.
I was his publicist. I wasn't managing anybody at the time. Okay. I only was managed Alice Cooper, Luther Vandross, Gina Vanelli. He's been very, very successful in the business. And he had a falling out with Rick. And then Rick's brother, who's an attorney, was managing him for a while. But there was really, I don't think there was anyone capable of, Rick wouldn't listen, so there really doesn't matter. A lot of people think that it's, well, his management should do this or his publisher should do that. But sometimes we're at a loss. We can't make a person do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah. Who was the best artist that said you're fired? But then it was so funny because so many said you're fired, and then they call you back when something else doesn't work out, and then you have to, it was like, wow. And he went back. I was amazed by some of the ones that you went back to.
Yeah, I think what you do, first of all, it's very natural. I don't think that people realize how many times artists get rid of their people.
Yeah.
But I know people that have, I know certain artists, they've had 6 or 7 or 8 managers, and it just is one of the things where there's a lot of people in their ear, all the time, and so listening to other people, and they're being influenced by that. And they make decisions, hastily, and sometimes they regret them. And, so in a couple of cases, I go back because, I think everything happens for a reason. And sometimes it's a matter of is it the right timing for me? Do I, is there something worthwhile coming back for? And so in a case like Babyface, he let me go. And when he let me go, disappointed because he didn't even tell me personally, but then we ended up working together again, and we had another successful run. Andre Crouch was a guy that I went back to as well. A lot of times I think people, until they don't have you, they don't really appreciate everything that you did for them.
There you go.
Or, the grass is greener on the other side.
Yes.
Yes. I think with a lot of times that's the case. And even the time when I went back with Kenny, he had a good manager. I thought that the manager, I watched from afar, and I thought he was doing a good job. So I said, well, I'm going to work with you again. But I said, I think Benny, the guy's name is Benny Medina, who's been, Jennifer Lopez's manager for a long time. He's a brother, and I just, I said, hey, if you want me to, I'm willing to consider. But, and he never explained the real reason why he left Benny. He just said we had a different, we were heading in the wrong direction. So I went back and.
What I thought was really interesting, and you do, a lot of people may not know that you were married to Vanessa Williams. A lot of people do, but when you do a search for Ramon Hervey II, what does it say? Ramon Hervey II, married to Vanessa Williams.
Yes. I'm like an appendage to Vanessa for the rest of my life.
I'm so amazed by that. However, you do dedicate a chapter in the book to her, and it is, what does it say? About infamy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You talk a famous currency. Infamy is a liability.
Right. And I
And
think a lot of people in her case,
yeah,
I cut you off. Go ahead, finish your
but,
question. I'm sorry.
but I was just saying that I remember that press conference. Why are they bothering her? But then we know why. But anyway, go ahead.
No, that press conference was one of the craziest moments in my career. It
Yeah.
was bedlam, just the whole, what a lot of the basis of that, how I met Vanessa was really after she had been asked to resign.
Hmm.
And I had been in her, she had like a consultant, a neighbor who was working with her at the time
Right.
because she was the first Black Miss America. And I knew I knew of her, when anytime, so I saw it and I said, oh, that's great. That's cute. She's cute. And, I'm happy that she
Hmm.
broke a barrier that has, I never would imagine, just like you don't think that, Barack Obama, that there was ever going to be a
That's
Black
true.
president in my life, one of those threshold moments. But I actually was brought in because the pageant gave her 72 hours
I know.
to respond, and I was the one who came up with that we're going to do this response within that 72, at the very end of that 72 hours, and we're going to do a press conference, but we're only going to make an official statement. People are not going to be able to ask you. You're going to read this, you're going to say this, and then you're going to move on with your life.
Hmm.
And at that time, in the very beginning of the 72 hours, I didn't even know, when I set up the press conference, I didn't know if she was going to fight to keep the crown or not. Because the other thing that history has not recorded correctly is she was not forced to resign. She was requested to resign because the pageant really didn't want to be, their whole gravy train is their television special. That's what drives that pageant, is their TV special. That's where they get most of their sponsors and everything. And they didn't want to be in any kind of litigation that would prevent that show from from going on as scheduled. And that's why they asked her to resign, but they didn't force her. And it was really up to her to resign. But within the very beginning, the first day and a half that I had to work with her, she was not going to resign. And the statement that I helped her prepare to represent her voice, it wasn't intended to be that way. So in the book, I explain how that changed. And but I'm very blessed to have met Vanessa. We raised 3 beautiful kids. I fell madly in love with her. We, had a lot of success together as a business partners and as parents. And, we have 3 beautiful kids. I'm a grandfather now. My middle daughter has a little boy who's a ray of sunshine and total joy. He's going to be 1 year old on December 28th.
Yeah.
And she's the one forever indebted to her for that.
What was Vanessa's mother's problem with you? Was it the age thing? Why didn't she want you guys to make it?
I think initially when I came in, I kind of helped set her on the right direction. They were very, very supportive, both her and her father. But I think when our relationship crossed over into a personal relationship, they weren't prepared for that. I was an outsider, outside of their sphere. I was from Hollywood. I was older. They thought she was going to win this multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and they had their own issues even without me being involved. So I don't think it was, I always look at it as it could have been anyone. I don't know. I try to take those things too personal. I'm not really dating the mother, so
True.
And I didn't have to see her every day, so it's just sort of, when you at that age, even at my age, it was just sort of I never wanted Vanessa to have to choose between me or her parents, and I tried to be supportive. And then once we got married, literally on the day we got married, her mom
came around.
Came around, and she's been one of my biggest, so I'm glad that I didn't do anything to make matters worse. I just stood my ground, but at the same time, I tried not to infuriate or inflame our relationship. I didn't want her to be a consistent adversary in my life, and as it turned out, we were able to move beyond our differences. And she accepted me. She didn't really change her. Helen is a unique woman. She didn't change. She just changed her way of looking at me. So I'm cool with her. We love each other, you know, and I tell her that. And she's been a really great grandmother to my kids.
You know, in reading the book, what struck me about you almost from the beginning has been your maturity. You had a very wise way of looking at things and handling situations. Because I mean, you were in a bunch of situations that anybody else would have ran away screaming, but you handled them, and it was almost like you were a fixer. I say you were a fixer. When I was reading some, I said, "Oh God, he was a fixer." But you were very mature, even from the early on with Richard Pryor, when you were going through so much with him, and all the way up. Where does that maturity, where did the young person, because I know wisdom comes with age. So where did that maturity come from in the beginning?
You know, I've always just been an independent thinker. And, you know, so I think I've always been a student of the industry. I studied, you know, I read, I analyze everything. And that, the more knowledge that you have, the more prepared you are for when you need to use it. And so I've always, my approach and where maybe my sense of maturity or calmness was from having, you know, being able to rely on my knowledge. That's where I always fell back on, and to try to just be a voice of reason. It's really, I never felt that it was my career. Even Vanessa, you know, it was never our career. My job as a publicist or a manager is to try to create a fusion between the artist persona, the art form, and the commercial viability of that. And if those two things are running parallel together, then you have an opportunity to sustain success. And then when you have success, that's when you start to learn how to deal with fame. But, you know, I had some mentors along the way. And I think the more crises you work with, you know, and the more you see. Also, I've witnessed, you know, in my time, I've witnessed a lot of crises, and I've always tried to put myself in the shoes of those people. Like, what would I do in that place? And, you know, working at a company called like Rogers and Cowan, where I got the opportunity, they had some of the biggest stars in the business. You know, I worked with some of the names. You know, I also got to work with Nick Nolte and James Caan. All these famous people, they all have setbacks, you know, and so you really learn, you know, everyone is different and every setback is different, but at least you get a sense of tolerance and how to, you know, everyone said, well, you're a fixer, you're a spin doctor. And really what it is you can't change the story, but you can change how it's dealt with. By, you know, instructing and giving people ways in which to cope and to get over it. You know, today it's even harder because social media is such a visceral, it creates a visceral reaction, and it, you know, the whole world can see something, and that's not what I had to deal with when I started. But now, in 3 seconds or 4 seconds, the whole
it's
world,
going around the world, right?
That's all around the world. That's why what you see happen now in this whole concept of canceling people in our culture, you know, like what happened to Will Smith. You know, he made a poor choice on one of the most watched programs in the world, the Academy Awards. So that reaction to him is enormous. You know, that's like if somebody did that same thing on the Super Bowl or anything like that, the audience reach is amazing. It's crazy.
It's quick and it's furious.
Dave Chappelle or Kanye, all these people who are being, you know, viewed or supported millions and millions of people, and they're making poor choices that can be reported on and regurgitated over and over again for days in social media. And everyone also has opinions now, you know, so companies, sponsors didn't want to be involved at all. They don't want to risk their own brand, you know, down by one person. who they're paying, to perform and to represent their company.
Right.
So you have all these entanglements that become much more like me. When these things happen, I can't spin a slap that everyone has already seen.
Right. How do you spin that? You don't.
You can only say, why did I do it, and walk on, I mean, in this case, I would have dealt with it differently. He's apologized, and I know Will, and I respect him. I don't respect what he did. I think he just made a poor choice. But I also think he and his handlers made a poor choice by not exiting the Academy Awards, and also by over apologizing. You only apologize once. And if you do it right, then you shouldn't have to do it again. Just go away. Let people reset and give them something else to talk about.
Yeah.
Which I know
you keep yourself in the forefront. Yeah.
So that's something I think in any crisis management, what can we do to put the flames out? That's really the real goal of people like myself, is how do we shutter this and get it in people. People do want to forgive. I think there's a natural tendency to want to forgive, particularly when things are self-afflicted. If you murdered someone, fortunately, Chris, and I know him too, he didn't get hurt, but he shouldn't have been, he was attacked, and luckily he didn't get hurt seriously. So I think people, if you infringe on someone's life in some way or hurt them, then that's harder to walk away from. Or there was no legal, he didn't get arrested. But once you break the law, they heal, or they may never heal.
Yes. You give so many examples of that without social media back in your day, of having to deal with crises and how you had to deal with them and spin those, so to speak. Today's environment, if you see an artist kind of going down that road, do you already think in your mind, I'm going to have to create something to get them out of this, or do you just wait for it to happen?
I think that you can speak up if you see a pattern that's disruptive and that you feel is not going to end well. I had conversations with Rick. I had conversations with, Al Jarreau. A lot of people, Al Jarreau had a drinking.
I do know that. Yes.
And, you try to talk to them and just say, hey, you're so talented. You just try to get them to believe that they can exist without,
Right.
And a lot of times with entertainers, what I think is a pattern is they feel as long as they can go on stage
and do what they do
their job, that it shouldn't matter what they do off stage. And unfortunately, that can work for a short period of time, but eventually they will overlap.
That's right.
And then you cancel things. You do, that was one of, the things with Richard. I mean, he canceled so many things. I just felt like that was my job. I'm just like,
I know.
Conciliatory. Okay, Richard, you're not going to this, so I got to go fix this, and I got to.
He will make you go. He will make you go and tell the people he's not coming, and then write a big check. That was amazing.
Yeah, I had to lie to Muhammad Ali, who was he's like my favorite. He's one of my heroines of my life. I'm just feel so blessed to have been able to be in his presence and to work with him briefly on a couple of projects, But to have to lie to him, I felt really bad that day. It really was a down time, I can't do this. I can't afford to do this. And there's times when you have to question and put boundaries on your own integrity, to preserve your own integrity. And I think that's what you're seeing happening today, again, where you see that on a crash course, a collision course, and he's not listening.
Yeah.
And, you see big agents, you see big publicists, you see managers saying, hey, I'm not going down with you.
I'm out.
I'm out. Yeah. And so that's something that I don't think you saw. It didn't happen when to be associated with.
Right, because that's your reputation. Yeah, that's your brand.
The Me Too movement was a big, a lot of guys, were buried because of that, and everybody wanted nothing to do with it.
That's right.
So there are consequences, for injustices. Not for all of them. We're still working on that.
But for some,
there's some of them.
Yeah. But they get canceled out in public opinion, in the world of public opinion, and that's where it counts, because at the end of the day, it's going to hit them in the pockets.
Yeah. It still becomes, we're a winning society is based on winning, and that in winning and currency, money, those two things speak louder than anything else. Capitalism is based on winning, not losing. And so everything is about, winning. But I think the thing is it's also when you have to understand that flame is fleeting. You're not going to last. And what do you do to drive and propel your ambition, keep it alive, when you know that you're not as relevant as you once were? And being able to make those adjustments. What are the adjustments that I need to sustain my success? Because fame, like I said, even if there's a lot of successful people I've been around that have never really been famous.
Not famous.
And they make good money. So fame is not the only way to again, it is a reward. So you have to really cherish it and really decide, I think a lot of people don't, when they take that jump from anonymity to a path where they think they want to be famous, there's no school famous. And by the time you become famous, it's too late. And that's where most of these young kids, because they're also products of their own generation and what social media does. And they're not cognizant of how quickly their missteps can be reported on, and how it can have a negative impact on their effort, their careers, and what they hope they would accomplish.
It's seriously a here today, you could be gone tomorrow kind of way right now. And so you're exactly right. There is no lessons, no books, nobody's telling you how to behave and what to do and what.
And there's there's no guarantees. Doesn't matter how on social media. The reality is only 1%, less than 1%. I did some research. I don't know if you remember it, but I think I mentioned it in my introduction. Samuel Arbsman, who is a mathematician, scientist, and author, and he came up with this formula to try to figure out how many famous people there are in the world. And he did it through Wikipedia, because you have to have a certain amount of acknowledgement even to get. And he divided it by the 7+ billion people in the world, and he came up with the fact that 0.0068. That's the amount of famous people in the world today. Then if you look at social media, everybody thinks that you can become famous on social media, but only 1% of the people on social media have even more than 1 million followers or have made $1 million. The majority of the most famous people on social media were famous before the platform was created. And so they helped to fuel social media, like the people like Rock and Kevin Hart and people like that. I mean, these guys were already big and they were using social media. They're making more money because of it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
But you can't. They give the illusion that that's possible for everybody, and it's not.
Yeah. Just great conversation. Look, y'all need to get the book. It is fascinating. When I tell you fascinating, the behind the scenes, what really happened, because Ramon tells you what really happened. It is just an awesome book talking about those 15 minutes. And this is the industry, this is the environment that we're in. Everybody wants that 15 minutes of fame. The name of the book is The Fame Game, an insider's playbook for earning your 15 minutes. Ramon Hervey II is the author. And Ramon, tell everybody how they can reach out to you, where they can find you, where they can find the book.
Well, I just want to say that one of my tenets at the very end of the book, there are some tenets. And the one thing I would say, and because you've been so understanding of what I try to communicate, is don't obsess about being famous. Obsess about being your best. And I think that's something that, whether you're in the entertainment business or not, that's applicable in any business that you're in. There's all kinds of fame in terms of, you could have local fame, you could have state fame, you can have community fame.
Regional.
But it's really not. But my book is, it's on Harper, it's Amistad, HarperCollins. Amistad is a Black primary for Black authors.
Print, yeah.
Print, yeah. And it was Black owned originally, and then HarperCollins bought it. So I'm on that imprint, and it's distributed by most of the major bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, and smaller retailers across the country.
It is a fantastic read.
If you want to check out more about me, my website is www.herveyandcompany.com. You can get a little bit more background about, and there's a highlight. I have a highlight about the book in there.
Book is fabulous, y'all. Make sure you go pick it up. Ramon Hervey II. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed the conversation with you, Twanda. Have a great day. Great evening.
Wasn't that a great conversation? To be a guest on the show, you can email me at twandablack@thepgnetwork.org, your digital streaming apps, or visit us at pgntv.org. We'll see you next time for some good news, y'all. Be blessed.